Hello everyone, welcome to 6 African Trade Talks, the show that brings you closer to the intra-Africa trade business world. I'm your host, Chad Chawanda. I would like to ask you to please leave a review. It will help us engage more with you and also to improve our podcast. If you haven't subscribed yet, please remember to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to podcasts from. In this episode, our guest is Marvin Kirschner. Marvin is the VP of Growth and Data at Sendy. Marvin, welcome to 6 African Trade Talks. How are you?
Very well. Hey, Chad. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Before we start our show, we'd like to hear a word from our sponsors.
Advocado Africa is a pan-African digital marketing social enterprise. With the exponential growth in smartphone users in Africa, you have to take your marketing digital. Advocado can do that for you. Advocado, minding your business.
Africa is talking business. Be a part of it. IATF is the key event boosting trade in Africa. No other event brings together more professionals under one roof. In 2021, IATF's theme will focus on the newly launched African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, a single market for goods and services across 54 countries aimed at boosting trade and investment. To learn more, visit www.intraafricantradefair.com.
Marvin, please tell us more about your professional and personal background.
I grew up in Germany. I spent most of my youth there, but then later also spent some time in South America. Then went on to study business administration. Quite boring, but it really opened up my horizon and allowed me to now do what I'm doing. So I did my bachelor and master in Switzerland. Again, spent some time in South America and also some time in consulting in Paris. But about 5.5 years ago, I think 5.5 by now, I got the opportunity to work for Sendy. So that actually brought me to Kenya, where I have been ever since. While I did start in different roles, right now I'm really focused on growth and data, and I'm in charge of those two departments. They are different in nature, but complement each other very well. So on the growth side, I'm really focused on making sure we grow the customers as well as the partners and provide the best experience. On the data side, it's about the business intelligence as well as machine learning and providing values to our customers.
Amazing. Business is no longer business as usual. There's a lot of complex things like data, analytics, and so forth. So interesting terrain. You recently noted that in 2021, your colleagues at Sendy have viewed your internal data analysis over 250,000 times. What have been the biggest lessons you have learned towards building a data-driven corporate culture over the years?
Yes, that's actually very interesting. So we're quite proud of that. But I actually used the number 250,000 to simply visualize the effects of a good data culture on decision making. Our internal data analysis has impacted over 250,000 decisions, and that's really how we think about it. So hopefully all those decisions were impacted for the better. But over the time, I've gotten quite a number of lessons. So first, I think it has to start at the top. Having a leadership that's really committed to growing a data-driven culture is key. The second aspect that might not be as obvious is that for us, speed and the experience we provide to the user, which in this case is our colleagues at Sendy, is very important. The faster we respond to any questions, the more questions we'll get in the future. And the more people start relying on data as a source for decision making. Then the other aspect is that we can't think about business without data. And same goes for most roles. Most roles these days require data to be successful, but it also means for us as a data team that training, teaching more about data languages like SQL or Python is really important. We've seen over the last about 2 years that about 30% of the team has picked up our internal classes regarding SQL. So by now, a huge percentage of our team is actually able to work on data themselves, which is really important to build that culture. The last part is actually on what I call proactiveness. It's not enough to just wait and see what our colleagues are asking for. But it's actually up to us to go out, look for interesting insights, and then make sure we share them with as many people as possible. At Sendy, we do have a culture of what we call over-communicating, but this goes a long way in establishing that culture I was talking about.
A culture of over-communicating. It can never go wrong, because at the end of the day, it's always best to make sure that people understand and there's enough information for them to make decisions. So thank you very much for sharing that. Please tell us more about the work and market reach of Sendy.
Sendy has come a long way, and I think the history of Sendy is quite significant to where we are right now. We can say that prior to Sendy, there was no reliable package delivery service to people's doorsteps in Kenya. People were actually spending hours commuting to the city center to collect packages that had been sent with bus companies, etc. And this really opened Sendy's first opportunity as a small project at a competition called Pivot East. We won the transport category, and since then, Sendy is focused on building the most trusted platform for all types of deliveries. Since then, Sendy has gone on to build a trusted end-to-end logistics solution. And I'll speak more to that in a second. But right now, we're enabling thousands of businesses to move any type of goods in Africa. And we do that with a couple of solutions. We have learned that from the beginning, our guiding philosophy is actually to enable everyone in Africa to trade and to prosper, and no one should be limited by high logistic fees or inaccessible resources. But for us, that means as a vision that we are focused on making trade easier for businesses. And making trade easier for businesses involves for us three pillars. There are marketplaces that are required. And for those marketplaces to function, we need logistics as well as financial services. So right now we have 4 business units, as we call them. On the one hand, we have fulfillment, which is really focused on logistics and making sure we have efficient deliveries across the country. Then we have a B2B e-commerce marketplace where we allow retailers to order through the platform from manufacturers, and we then deliver the next day. We provide a freight marketplace where we connect shippers to carriers and then are also involved in the financing of those moves, as well as the financial service business unit, which really helps to make sure transactions go smoothly and payments and the financial aspects are not a barrier. Now, Sendy was founded in Kenya and has since grown to Uganda and the rest of East Africa, as well as Cote d'Ivoire and Nigeria. And we have plans to expand into Northern and Southern Africa soon as well. And as of right now, we have grown to 300 employees. So from a small startup to now a larger company that is providing the jobs across the continent.
That's amazing. We can say Sendy is enabling intra-Africa trade through providing better solutions in logistics. So thank you very much for sharing. What do you envision will be the role of data towards facilitating sustainable growth on the continent?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. I would start with saying that data can really act as an enabler, or it can drive efficiencies for existing businesses. Now, if we talk about data acting as an enabler, that means that without data, there is no business. And there are actually quite a number of examples for that. One example is AI, and I can enable various businesses from finance to healthcare, even farming. On the efficiency side and the improvements that come with or that data can bring, I would say this really applies to basically every business. Data is key to making better decisions, to improve processes, but also to simply improve efficiencies. Now, when it comes to sustainable growth, which is what we all strive for, I believe that data will play a huge role in enabling businesses as well as increasing their efficiency. So a few examples that come to mind are around healthcare, for example, illness detection, where AI can play a huge role, especially in areas that don't have access to the best healthcare. Farming, so for example, weed control with drones, and those images are then analyzed by AI, or the data is being captured, which can help to improve farming techniques. But in general, it's basically most sustainable development goals are actually impacted. For example, quality education through personalized learning, striving for zero hunger through farming and better farming procedures. Now, what's also important to mention is that it really helps governments, NGOs, institutions to have good data to make better decisions. That will be key in reducing inequalities, to basically play a better role within society. As of right now on the continent, we definitely have a data deficit. For a lot of decisions that impact a lot of people, there is a lack of data. And I think all businesses can really play a role here in ensuring we improve the data availability across the continent. But this is really what I hear from institutions I speak to, that this is a major blocker. So I think the role of data is huge, and also the role that all businesses can play to drive sustainable growth on the continent.
Thank you. Before we continue, we'd like to hear a word from our sponsors.
Did you see that billboard? No, I didn't. I was looking at my phone. That's how billboard advertising is now ineffective. If you ever wondered how to employ people with disabilities, then by working with Advocado, you would have just done that. Advocado is a social enterprise focusing on using digital marketing to create employment for people of determination and young women across Africa. Let's do it together. If you want to make a difference, contact us now at www.advocado.africa.
Marvin, the COVID-19 pandemic has affected the supply chains in countless ways, leading to the realization that the global supply chain is more fragile than previously thought. In what ways do you believe data could be used to increase the resilience of global supply chains?
Yeah, thanks, Chad. Well, I think that's a huge question. But one thing that always comes to mind is the bullwhip effect. Definitely plays a major role here. So the bullwhip effect is a supply chain phenomenon describing how small fluctuations in demand at the retail level can cause progressively larger fluctuations in demand at the wholesale, distributor, manufacturer, etc. level. So it basically means that if suddenly the increase in demand is 10%, that now the retailer realized, oh, there's a 10% increase in demand. Let me order 20% more from the wholesaler. The wholesaler sees 20% increase in demand and now starts ordering 40% more from the distributor. And this has a huge impact on supply chain. And I think COVID-19 was a trigger for that. And we still see this now 1.5 years later, that a small change still has a huge impact on the supply chain. Now, for us, that means that tech and data can have a huge impact here. As much as countries like Kenya, in my experience, experienced, for example, less stockouts during the beginning of the crisis, this is something that we strive to work on and to improve. But what I can say here is that, or to just get back to what I said, many countries around the world are very much focused on just-in-time production. And that is actually what makes the bullwhip effect even stronger. If I produce just in time and don't have any stocks, that means a small change can really bring an imbalance to the systems. In Kenya, we know that companies, supermarkets, distributors keep higher stocks. And I think that's why we saw less stockouts. Now, the goal is, of course, to find the right balance between both approaches, bringing the efficiency that data and tech can provide to the African supply chains is very important to driving down cost. There are lots of studies that describe how expensive logistics, stocking, warehousing is to the final cost of everyday goods. And reducing that through data by, for example, predicting the effects of these supply chain changes and enabling companies to react quicker is very important.
Interesting. You raised a very interesting angle to these issues of stockouts. We found countries in the Western world, running out of tissue paper, but we didn't find the same in a lot of countries in Africa. So yeah, it's quite interesting. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Yeah.
In what ways has leveraging of machine learning and artificial intelligence given your organization a competitive edge within the sector?
Yes, I think the first thing that I want to mention here is that Sendy has, from the get-go, invested in local talent. So in training, in molding local talent. We have an internal engineering academy, but we have done that because we believe that local solutions can best be dealt with local tech leaders. And that has really put Sendy on a good path. These days, we have various teams working with new technologies like machine learning, AI, but also just smarter algorithms. Now, as a data team, we have implemented various machine learning models, really with a focus on improving the customer experience. For example, we predict when a rider will arrive, how the demand and supply side looks like, and how we can improve our own operations to provide a better experience to the customer. Now, it's also important to mention that the opportunities here are endless. And this is something that will continue to drive. And hopefully we are set up in a way that we can provide more and more value with the data that we capture. But our focus here is really on providing a better customer experience and being able to scale the same technology across the continent. And any country that we are entering now, we already have a head start in terms of what we can provide.
Interesting. And, Africa presents a lot of opportunities. We'll talk about the Africa Continental Free Trade shortly. In what ways will the African Continental Free Trade Agreement impact your business operations?
Yes, perfect. The free trade agreement, it covers a market of 1.2 billion people, a GDP of $3 trillion. And the agreement has now been signed by basically all except of one country within the African Union. And I think 38 countries have ratified it as of today. And of course, the goal is to create a single market for goods and services in Africa and deepen the continent's economic integration. Now, one of the ways it seeks to do this is to progressively eliminate tariffs for traded goods. And I think this is very key. It will take some time to show, but what we see right now is that tea that's being produced in Kenya is being exported to the UK to be packaged there and is then being re-imported to Nigeria. And all of that is creating inefficiencies. It reduces the opportunity, etc. And there are various reasons, but I think all of those can be tackled and will be tackled. Of course, there are aspects around infrastructure, inefficiencies. Transporting goods from Kenya to Nigeria might be more expensive than to the UK. And we are playing a huge role within that ecosystem in the way that we can facilitate the trade with marketplaces, but also with the logistics. Now, we know that startups can't do it alone. It requires governments, it requires institutions to support this transition, but we're very excited to play a role here. Now, for us, we are focused in expanding across the continent and in the long term, enabling this cross-continental trade. We are already building capacity in East Africa and West Africa. We're looking at Northern and Southern Africa as well. And I think this will give us a head start in providing these services and enabling that trade that I was speaking about.
Looking forward to, realizing the potential of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Finally, what one thing about the African continent continues to surprise you?
Oh, wow, there are lots of things, but I think maybe I can mention two. The first one, goes without saying, it's the youth, the energy and drive that comes with having nations with such a young average age keeps surprising me. It brings a lot of new ideas, innovation to the companies on the continent. And it's always exciting to work with people that are driven towards a common goal. The other thing is that the more I travel across the continent, the more I realize that the countries across the continent have a lot of similarities. There are also a lot of differences. And there are lots of unique opportunities that come with those. As we expand across the continent, we always do a lot of research on the characteristics of each country and which business solutions make the most sense. But I think that's something that keeps surprising me, and I think it will keep surprising me in the future. But all in all, this is what makes it super exciting. And I'm really looking forward to see how, we can help grow the economies across the continent.
My business is growing. Thanks to Advocado Africa, digital marketing is the way to go. I get to know what my customers want and how they feel in real time. Besides, I choose how much to spend. I feel in control. If you want to take control of your marketing, contact Advocado Africa now. Visit www.advocadoafrica. Advocado Africa. We mind your business.
Africa is a continent full of potential, but potential means nothing if we don't take action to create value. Let us take action. Thank you for listening to this episode. Don't forget to post and share this episode on your social media platforms. It will help us reach our mission of sharing knowledge about intra-Africa trade and making it available to as many people as possible. Let us grow our continent. We can go far, fast, together. If you can please leave a review on our podcast page or on Apple Podcasts. See you next time.